This one's going to be a little different. Serial killers have many different twisted reasons or psychological issues that lead them to murder, but there is a different kind of killer. Men and women have killed for money or to further a criminal enterprise since societies were first formed. Many would imagine a mafia hitman when they think of criminal murderers, but recent times have seen a different sort of monster rise to prominence. For years, bodies strewn in their wake and the occasional arrest were the only signs of their heinous acts. Those who did not live in the vicinity felt separate from the violence and death, but no longer. The vicious acts of brutality are recorded and uploaded to the internet for the world to see. Videos of cartel violence have been shared around the world, each seemingly worse than those that came before. The methods range from beheading to flaying to burning, and no weapons are off limits. Some have used axes and knives, others gasoline and box cutters. The only consistent aspect is depravity and extreme violence. Hundreds, if not thousands, have died in the last few decades, and there is no sign that the killing is slowing down. There are many different groups who perpetuate the cycle of violence and death, but this video will focus on only one. Cartel de Jalisco, Nueva Generacion. The Monsters of Mexico. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, often referred to as CJNG, is one of the more recent groups to form in Mexico. In 2009, the Millennial Cartel broke away from the Sinaloa Cartel. The group then split further into smaller factions, and one of these new drug gangs would become CJNG. After the split, the two main organizations that formed were La Resistencia and the Torcidos, in English, the Resistance and the Twisted Ones. The Torcidos were founded by Nemesio Azaguera Cervantes, nicknamed El Mencho. His two main generals were Eric Valencia and Martin Arzola Ortega, both of whom were given numbers for their nicknames. La Resistencia would eventually become Carteles Unidos, while the Torcidos would become CJNG. El Mencho has a lengthy criminal history, including arrests in the U.S. In the late 80s and early 90s, he was arrested for drugs and weapons possession multiple times in the San Francisco area of California. Eventually, he was sent to prison after police caught him on a sting selling heroin to an undercover team. After 3 years in a federal prison, he returned to Mexico, and there he married a daughter of one of the leaders of the Millennial Cartel and began climbing the ranks. He had been a cartel leader for quite some time when he splintered off to form what would become CJNG. The cartel's first task was to consolidate power and control of Jalisco. This began with a war against La Resistencia and the infamous Zetas. In the first videos to be released from CJNG, they referred to themselves as Mata Zetas, or Zeta Killers, though some believe this is actually a subset of this new cartel. Almost immediately, bodies began turning up all over Mexico. In 2009, 3 bodies were discovered in a residential neighborhood of Cancun with a note that revealed the killers as the Mata Zetas and said that they were going to clean up Mexico. In 2011, there were 2 separate massacres attributed to CJNG. Around 70 bodies were found. Half had been dumped under an overpass in Boca del Rio in the state of Veracruz, and the others were dumped on a freeway after gunmen stopped traffic and pulled the bodies out of the backs of their trucks. Messages claimed the victims were members of Los Zetas, however, only a handful had criminal histories and none were known to have any cartel connections. In March of 2015, the organization was suspected of an attack that left 5 federal police dead. Then in April of 2015, CJNG ambushed and killed 15 police officers. They had been driving in a convoy when cartel members unloaded on them with rifles and grenade launchers. These attacks put CJNG on the government's radar as a major threat, and their leader, El Mencho, was designated as a criminal kingpin. One of the most brazen attacks committed by the cartel in the year 2015 was the shooting down of a military helicopter in May. Using a rocket launcher, the group forced the helicopter to crash land, killing 5 of the soldiers within. The rest of the month was filled with violent clashes between authorities and CJNG, which left more dead and several gas stations and dozens of vehicles burned to the ground. In addition to the violence against police and even the military, the cartel reinforces their position by spreading propaganda to the communities in which they operate. The notes are often left with mangled bodies and often speak of stopping kidnappers and other criminal elements. In 2020, they took a page out of the Hells Angels book and distributed toys and food. But more than the news reports and charitable acts of the vicious cartel, they are known for the horrific videos posted to social media to intimidate rivals and soften anyone who is thinking of resisting them. There are countless videos of CJNG executions, and some have risen to internet fame on shock sites for their extreme level of violence. Rival cartel members, traitors, and even police have had their deaths recorded to be uploaded for the world to see. Some of the videos show only interrogations or confessions, while others have both the interrogation and execution of a person. In 2017, 2 of the top men in CJNG broke away to form their own cartel. One of them was original member Eric Valencia, known as L85, and the other was a man named Carlos Enrique Sanchez Martinez, nicknamed El Cholo. Together they formed the Nueva Plaza cartel. However, El Mencho saw their actions as treason, and his sicarios began making plans to eliminate their new competition. On March 18, 2021, El Cholo was captured, interrogated on camera, then killed. The video opens with Martinez sitting in a bright red polo shirt in front of several heavily armed CJNG soldiers. He is confessing to murders and attacks on the people of Jalisco. His body was left wrapped like a mummy in black plastic with a note naming him as a traitor. Many of the videos depict the dismemberment and decapitation of their enemies. In one case, the victims are said to be a policeman and his son. They are beaten, and the dad is beheaded before his son is flayed. Others depict the cutting out of tongues with a knife and pliers, and the removal of eyes with a spoon. One of the most famous CJNG videos is known as Ghost Rider, and it is something that no one should see, much less experience. The video involves the horrific torture of a Carteles Unidos member in mid-September of 2020. He had been captured after 3 days of fighting that left 20 dead. Some say he was nicknamed Ghost Rider and had committed similar acts against others as was done to him. His face was either skinned or burned with acid or fire. The cartel members then filmed as they poured rubbing alcohol onto his head and set it on fire. As he squirms and screams, they laugh and ridicule him. His head and face look like something out of a B horror movie or a bloody Red Skull from the Marvel films. The process of drenching him in alcohol and setting him on fire is repeated, and yet he survives, begging them to kill him as they twist his head back by the patch of hair that remains. When the video ends, he is still alive, yet he was undoubtedly dead soon after. The video is absolutely gut-wrenching and rivals the brutality of even the worst serial killer. CJNG also killed a social media star named Juan Luis Lagunas Rosales, known as the Pirate of Culiacan. The 17-year-old was known for partying and had become a bit of a celebrity, but when he insulted El Mencho, his fate was sealed. On December 18th of 2017, cartel killers saw his location at a bar in a post and arrived locked and loaded. He was shot repeatedly and those around him were collateral damage. While it was a terrible thing compared to others who challenged CJNG, he got off easy. The violence shows no signs of stopping. CJNG makes a lot of money and will ruthlessly defend their streams of income and territory. With multiple wars going on, they will be fighting for quite a while, and the people of Mexico will ultimately be the ones to suffer.